following is a transcript of an interview that was recorded on January 7th, 2016. It has recently been edited to cut out any personal information for release with a few exceptions. The interviewee is a retired Nickelodeon executive who wishes to remain anonymous, so he is hereby referred to as executive in the interview. He agreed to publicly release his transcript so long as the edits were made. Interviewer: Alright, we're recording now. So, you're a former executive at Nickelodeon? Executive: That is correct. Interviewer: How long have you been working in that field until you decided to retire? Executive: About 10 years now, I think, where I was working in two positions, mainly as producer for SpongeBob and manager for the staff since my employment in 2000. I'm a family man. I have a son who's going to be 16 years of age this year now. My wife and I are now preparing for his birthday. Interviewer: How nice. Did you ever tell him that you were an executive in Nickelodeon? Executive: Yeah, I did. But he didn't believe me at first until I showed him the proof, and you wouldn't believe the look on his face. Interviewer: Okay, back on track. So, when you were promoted as an executive... Executive: 2004, just when the SpongeBob movie was released. My boss came into my office and said that I was going to be promoted as an executive since I had a bachelor's degree with some experience in supervisory. And then jackpot, I got the promotion and another career map laid out in front of me. When I got home, I told my wife, and she was excited to hear that there was a promotion to an executive level, since executives are well paid, and why so? We were going to be rich. Interviewer: What's your opinion on the current status of SpongeBob and Nickelodeon? Executive: Well, it's clear that SpongeBob and Nickelodeon had fallen from grace in the past years. Nickelodeon just keeps rushing out mediocre shows with horrible ratings, and on the other hand, it has been complete trash with horrible jokes and episodes such as the infamous one-course meal or the originally titled Plankton Got Served. Now, SpongeBob has touched on suicide before, but not as disgusting and mean-spirited as that one. It was so terrible that my kid hated it, and even the entire staff despised its very existence. But what about the other executives? Simple. They don't care. They just want to get their money as soon as possible, and that means giving a pass on every horrible show and episode. Occasionally a few good ones do get aired, but there's rarely a good episode on Nickelodeon. I guess I'm the only guy that really cares about quality rather than quantity, but since Stephen Hillenburg's returning to SpongeBob, I bet Nickelodeon is going to get better and return to what it used to be. Interviewer: Now that you have sparked further in my interest in the cause of the phone Executive: What about it? Interviewer: Well, because you mentioned that there was an incident on Nickelodeon's channel over a phone. Executive: Oh yeah. That was a few years ago. Now let me clear that this is something I don't want to remember, and no, this isn't a lost episode that you see on the internet. They don't exist, but we do take a similar thing with the sponge who can fly. But it wasn't locked away in a vault, never to be seen again, and we only use the lost episode word as a problematic tactic, and nothing was really strange about it. No, this is a completely different thing that no one has ever heard of. Interviewer: Can you describe this particular incident? Executive: I never told anyone this, but here it goes. Basically, it was a signal intrusion, but nothing of an intrusion I had ever seen before. Kind of like the Max Headroom incident, except a lot longer. I was sick with the flu, so I stayed home, and I heard that a new SpongeBob episode was going to be aired that day, so I told my son, and he reluctantly joined me. He was thinking that it was just another poorly written episode to facepalm, knowing how bad the show had gotten. We sat on the sofa, staring at the television, watching other shows and advertisements. At 12:17 p.m., the episode finally was about to air, but before the SpongeBob intro would come on, there was some flicking static on the advert I couldn't really remember on, nor do I really care about it, as I'm going to describe the following events. I can still remember my son saying, "What's wrong with the TV, Dad?" until the screen was fully engulfed by static. I immediately called my boss to see what was going on. He told me that somebody was jamming Nickelodeon's signals, and he would call me back to keep me updated on noticeable developments. He hung up there and resumed watching the television. The static vanished, and there was a title card named Insanity. But it instantly changed to Heart and Mind, and then kept changing to a number of titles in a fraction of seconds. Interviewer: How long was this? Executive: It just lasted for a minute, and then the opening showed. It was corrupted text, but I'm pretty sure that it was just one person who made this fan-made episode. Interview. So, it was unofficial. Executive. Of course it was. The creators never created this, obviously. Executive. Once the opening credits were going, the episode started with the opening shot of the Krusty Krab from a bird's eye perspective, late at night, and then a jump cut to the entrance of the Krusty Krab. The camera zoomed into the doors and went past them. SpongeBob was at the cashier looking towards the screen. Squidward was nowhere to be found. A look on SpongeBob's face revealed emotionally that he was terrified, possibly because he was the only employee currently at the Krusty Krab. A few minutes pass, and there's an illuminated arm which slowly came from the left side of the screen. Then it quickly grabbed SpongeBob's head with a startling speed, and SpongeBob screamed. The figure then ran to the entrance with SpongeBob in his hands and threw him out. It then cut to a shot of SpongeBob on the ground, and then switched to a shot of the illuminated figure at the doors. It couldn't have been a physique of Mr. Krabs. It didn't have the shadler or the tall eyes. It didn't even look like any of the fish characters at all. It was thin and had human features such as fingers and barely visible hair. Interviewer. What was it doing? Executive. Yelling at SpongeBob. I presume because of the head movements. I couldn't decipher what it was saying, though. There was no audio in this section, and we figured it was too dark to see its lip movements. After this, it closed the door on SpongeBob. At this point, he was more terrified than before. Eventually, though, he calmed down and started walking home. The camera followed SpongeBob, and then the screen wiped to a sideways shot of SpongeBob walking home with the night sky as a background. The sky wasn't the usual SpongeBob night sky with darkened out flowers, but a time-lapse sky of Earth. If you had actually seen it, you could have recognized the stars of Mars and Venus among others. The disturbing thing about this background sky was that there was photorealistic eyes in the sky, and they weren't there in the beginning opening shot of this made-up episode. They were moving left to right. During this section, my boss called me and picked up. He said that Nickelodeon's engineers are trying desperately to halt the broadcast. He also said that they were looking into tracing the hijacker, but he said at this rate it was likely because the hijacker was using microwave-like signals from multiple locations. Therefore, whoever had this had some professional help, likely to set up with the help later to cover his or her tracks. The shot of SpongeBob walking home with the sky lasted about 6 minutes. Then SpongeBob reached his destination, and then the jump cut to an outside bird's-eye view of his home where he walked into the door, opened and closed it behind him. There was even an eerie, almost cracking noise that stopped once it went to the next scene. The next scene was in Squidward's house. There was a forward shot towards Squidward. He was reading a newspaper. The words in the newspaper were readable, and it was describing an outbreak of an unknown virus. However, a phone was ringing, and Squidward folded the newspaper to pick it up once he did. There was a baritone voice, so you know the sound effect they use in cartoons. Anyway, Squidward responded with, "Yeah," and "Okay, I'll be there." Presumably his voice was telling him to come to its location. He puts the newspaper on the table and walks out the front door, but I could remember seeing an open doorway that Squidward did not include in his house. It looked somewhat familiar. Interviewer. How did your son react to this episode? Executive. Nothing. He was just bland for some reason. Fuck me. Shit. Interviewer. Are you okay? Executive. Yeah. Just overreacting. That's why I don't really want to talk about this incident. It's just something. Never mind. So anyway, Squidward entered his car, which was rarely seen in episodes, and started it. He began driving on a dirt road. I don't know why. It was just odd for a dirt road to instantly appear at his house. My boss texted me this time and asked to bring a video camera or something. We didn't have a video camera, only just this late 90s camera that we never used after the 2000s that we put in our closet. I rushed there and picked up the camera and then rushed back to our sofa. Squidward was still driving on that dirt road, and then a black van soon followed him. Then the van passed and turned right to what appeared to be an abandoned schoolhouse. The scene soon went to black, and whispers were audible, and an image came up for 15 minutes. I loaded my camera and took a picture before it faded away. It was an image of a man in a white shirt holding a sheet stained with an unknown substance. And then my boss called again, and I rushed to pick it up. He told me that they were going to cut the station temporarily for 26 hours after tracing and hauling the broadcast where attempted to continuously failed. He told me to bring the camera tomorrow and hung up. Another image. No video or GIF, but oh God. Interviewer. What happened? Executive. It was an image GIF or video. I don't fucking care. It was a GIF or a fucking image of my house in my bedroom. There was a theme of SpongeBob faintly in the distance somewhere with some figure walking through the open doorway. I took my camera and took a photo and then blackout. The screen was black as they shut down the station. The broadcast had ended, but before the text popped up, they read, "Be seeing you soon." My son and I were shocked. I turned off the TV and my son never went to bed at night out of fear for what would happen to him. I had to explain this to my wife, which was less than stellar. Executive. Fuck this, I'm out. I should have never mentioned that over the phone. Interviewer. What about the camera? Executive. Yeah, short answer, I have it and the photos with it. Interviewer. Did you try confiscating the photos? Executives. That's a yes and a no. Yes, they confiscated all photo and video of the incident, but not mine. When I came to Nickelodeon Studios into my boss's office, he told me to leave and keep the camera. I asked why, and he said that he always was me better than the other executives, and he mentioned the Nickelodeon CEO ordered all photos and videos to be confiscated and destroyed. He said that I should keep the photos, but saying that it was a huge risk, but he was willing to take the chances, quote unquote. I left the studio but kept my job for a few years, but due to security reasons, I retired and I was at the right age. But the scary thing about that whole thing, that it was covered up quite so well. I mean, in fact, it was so well hidden, in fact, that neither news articles nor anyone mentioned it or was even aware of this existence. Anyway, can we terminate this interview? Interviewer. Yeah, if you wish. Executive. Good. I'll scan the photos and send them to you via email. Interviewer. One more question. Executive. Yeah? Interviewer. What did your boss say before you walked out? Executive. He said, never mention this incident and to watch myself in the eyes. The executive was displeased at what the interview had turned out, still paranoid of his safety and privacy. It's unknown what had happened to him or what his current status is of now.